We're going to be checking out a video about all the different changes on Zenless Zone Zero. So just for some context, I have played through CBT1, CBT2, and CBT3. So I'm going to be able to give my insight on all the different things. The reason I didn't really say much about any of the CBTs because I wasn't really captured by anyone except for CBT3. I thought there was a lot of cool changes that they were able to do. And honestly, I just kind of forgot to make my review because Weather Waves came out. But we're going to be checking out Gotcha Gamer here and seeing what they have to say about some of the different changes that are coming and kind of like their breakdown of what they thought of CBT2. So I will leave a link in the description down to this video if you guys want to check it out for yourself without my yapping. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
Recently announced that Zenless Zone Zero is finally going open beta worldwide.
Oh, also open beta typically translates to release. Okay, so when anybody like when somebody says like open beta, they're typically talking about the release. So it is going to be coming out July 4th as like release
on July 4th.
In case anybody's confused by that.
As someone who has participated in all of the
like a
closed
CN
betas
slang,
before,
I guess.
I have some thoughts about this because it's been quite the roller coaster ride following the journey of ZZZ. As you already know, the game received a fair share of criticisms, which I will be addressing today and tell you what has changed, and more importantly, what you can expect from this game. Now, funnily enough, this video is actually sponsored by Hoyo, and
okay, so I won't go into it too critical, but typically whenever somebody's sponsored, they tend to, you know, be a little bit more kind to the game. But I think this guy's already made a couple of other videos that were a little bit on the harsher side. So I'd be kind of curious to see how Hoyo took this. So not every sponsorship makes you say positive things, but of course, whenever you're sponsored, you tend to say nice things just because money feels nice. But it kind of depends on the contract and what has. So he'll probably explain that here in a couple of seconds. But I wanted to talk about the changes. So from CBT1, it was very monotonous and very grindy, especially for the TV stuff. It was just such a hassle to go through it, and it was not fun at all. CBT3 was actually surprisingly a lot better, like 10 times better. You essentially did have a little bit of a, you know, grind through the first like little chapter, I would say, into like the prologue and kind of teaching over different thing. You did have the TV stuff. There was a couple of things that made it a little easier. Like you can click like on one side of the map, as long as nothing was in your way, your little guy would zoom all the way there instead of CBT1 where you had to go each tile by each tile. And it was just, wow. It was, I don't know who thought that would be a good idea. And then there's some parts where you can kind of like 2x speed some of the story dialogue if you just don't care, because some of it's a little bit of a yap fest, especially when you're doing like side quests. And you're like, all right, bro, just shut up. You could 2x speed that. I wish they could skip it, but hey, you know, it's a little bit better. So I'm kind of curious to see what he's going to talk about, so I'll let him kind of talk,
I think it's
and then we'll go
cool
through
of
it.
them to do this, since I have voiced my opinion.
Okay,
and
so he's going to
feedback
talk about
the
it.
game twice already, and I definitely didn't hold back when it came to dishing out harsh truth. So hey, they thought, why not make this into a trilogy and help support me along the way?
That could mean that they're pretty, you know, confident that they've made the changes that people like to see, so they're willing to pay someone to talk about it. I don't know. You know, could it be kind of a power move?
Me just doing my own thing and let you guys know what's up about
Nah, I'm gonna do my own
now,
thing.
in this video, I will be covering two major topics: the differences between the previous and latest closed beta versions, and my thoughts about the game's future. And starting with the first topic, I am honestly shocked how much the game has changed since the last closed beta test, and how different it feels right now. For
Yeah, it's
example,
changed
if we
quite a
take look
lot.
at the most criticized aspect about the game, the TV mode, it's no secret. Even as someone who loves puzzle games, it was too much and too slow back in CBT1 and CBT2. However, now there's a fast forward button you can press to accelerate everything in TV mode, which is really nice. But then this mode by itself won't appear everywhere, and now it's just limited to story exploration missions as well as Hollow Zero mode. And even then, a lot of the TV mode has been cut out, so it appears less and has shorter puzzles. What this means is that
As you tend to go through the game, it actually does become less of like a necessity, and it becomes kind of something that you do on certain missions, as well as like kind of side missions that are trying to tell a story. So it's kind of weird because obviously Zenless Zone Zero has like that little city that you're able to run through and like have dialogue, and you're able to run around and talk to people and stuff like that. But the TV is almost like kind of a similar version of that. Like you're doing a lot of the story stuff in that TV zone, and you're interacting in kind of a way that, like, you know, imagine the open world or like the semi-open world of Honkai Star Rail, where you're going back and forth and talking all this different stuff. They almost kind of do that in the TV. At least on CBT1 and CBT2 was like a hard focus where basically you were doing a lot of the story stuff inside of your TV, and it was just kind of monotonous because you used to have to go like one tile by one tile. And now they've kind of given it a little bit more of like, you know, you're out in the real world doing stuff a little bit, and then you're in the TV far less. So I'm so happy that they're able to change that. A lot of people didn't think they
Now,
would.
Rally and combat commissions will contain only, well, combat, and they're super fun, especially rally commissions. It has completely changed as a game mode. Previously, you had to farm it constantly for these materials to obtain disk drives, which are like artifacts, and the first few times it was exciting. However, that 20th time where I needed to
Yeah,
grind
it would
a
get
long rally
wild.
commission became a chore. So now it's a one-time dungeon-like instance which contains secrets, boss fights, and pure combat.
Yes, this is actually a huge thing that I really like. So you can actually kind of run around. Now, it doesn't give you like total freedom. Obviously, you're in a confined space, but you're able to take like a couple different paths and find, like you said, hidden bosses and stuff like that. It's actually a lot of fun. And it's something that I got caught up in doing. Like, it took me like 30-ish minutes to do some of my first ones just because they're actually pretty hard, especially when you find some of the tankier enemies and you're just kind of going through it. Now, I will say some of those tankier enemies, damn, I can't talk, seem kind of more like HP buffed and like just kind of seem like sponges. So we'll kind of have to see like how it works in terms of like my team, because at that point I was probably under level for some of the different hidden bosses that I found. So it could have been kind of just that. But overall, I think it was really cool because, like you said, it used to be just kind of like the same thing on loop you had to keep going through. But then they changed it to where it's just like this instant space thing where you can kind of run around and find different spots. Which,
also, after completing the one-time rally commission from the main story, a randomly selected scenario from unlocked rotation scenarios will cycle weekly, which is
yeah,
great.
it's cool.
But speaking of combat, a couple of big changes have been made to it. The most prominent one being that
elements
characters now belong to
and the
one of the
roles.
roles: attack, stun, anomaly, support, and defense. I think it's safe to say that previously, it was hard to pinpoint what team you might want to build exactly, since the roles weren't defined clearly, and at least in my opinion, adding these roles will help to define the characters quite easily. Also, the W engine equipment, which are basically...
And I don't know if this is in CBT 1 and 2, because honestly, I kind of lost my attention after a while, but they now have like kind of correlations between some of the elements that do a little bit kind of like what Genshin does, but it's not like as in depth, I guess. You know, it's talking about as much in depth as Genshin gets, but basically you can mix like two elements and it'll do some sort of like additional damage on top of doing like additional like a target to their stun meter. And it's just kind of one of those things that makes it a little bit more worth it to actually switch off, which the game wants you to do tons and tons, but it kind of gives you an incentive to try to hit them as much as you can with your element, and just kind of like going into, you know, having different, you know, attributes and stuff like that to enhance the ability to be able to do that. So it's kind of more fun to be able to team build, in my opinion.
Character's path in Honkai Star Rail, meaning you can only activate the passive effect of the weapon if it matches the character's role. Now, the other big change to combat,
the Bamboos.
are these cute Bangboos.
They're able to come out, dude. You can play as them. They're not just useless shits. I think what they originally used to do is like give you some sort of status effect. Basically, they were just like an equipment. But now you can actually use them, and they're so cool because you can actually combo into them,
Just tagged
and they do, you know, a little bit more damage. Not a ton, but they're just fun.
When you trigger a chain attack, you can actually switch to a Bangboo, and boy is it fun to do this because the animations are just so.
And they have a bunch of different
actually
ones
feel
too.
Really useful in combat. Also, you still have a choice to ignore the Bangboo and just chain attack with the agent instead.
Yeah,
and
you can do
there's
that.
a limited amount of times you can trigger the Bangboo attack in a single chain. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that they do not overstay their welcome in combat. But let's talk about the story mode. My biggest gripe about it was that you needed to spend stamina in order to progress.
Yeah, here we
which was
go.
very weird, since Hoyo got rid of this convention both with Genshin and HSR. Well, surprise,
Yeah, they got rid of it in
You no
this.
longer need to spend the stamina on story
That
mode.
didn't even make sense in CBT 1 and CBT 2. Like, why would you even have stamina tied to the story action stuff? It's like, it doesn't even make any sense to be able to do that. So I was so happy to be able to see this. Now, like I said, I didn't get very far in CBT 1 and CBT 2. So whenever I went into CBT 3, I was like, trying to think about it for that one. I was like, was it part of it? I couldn't remember. So I'm glad they kind of confirmed
that's
that.
not enough. It went from 180 to 240 stamina, which is always nice for people who have busy lives and don't log in.
Yeah, that's
that
nice too.
often.
Nice
On the
little
same
boost.
note, believe it or not, but co-op has actually been added into the game. Unfortunately, I do not have any footage to show it to you as I didn't get to try it out. But from what
Yeah, I
I
didn't do
heard,
co-op
you
either.
can challenge the weekly bosses either via matchmaking or with your friends. So hey, there's a social aspect of the game.
Yo, okay, yeah, I didn't get to that in mine. I played quite a lot, but I was really focusing on the story and just some different elements that were not co-op. I guess I never got to that point, but that's pretty cool too. So I wonder, it's obviously going to be like instant space where you're just fighting the one boss, he said. So I mean, I kind of
And by the
wonder
way,
what the ping's
some
going
of
to
the
be,
footage
bro.
I'm using here is provided by I Win to Lose Gaming, so huge thanks to him for helping me out. Now, let's talk about the difficulty and the endgame. In my previous video, I said that the game is very easy until you start doing the Hollow Zero mode. Well, the developers have now added a casual
now they have a
and
challenge mode.
difficulty modes.
Now, I will say about this challenge mode, though, is it almost seems like it's kind of a cop-out. And the reason I'm going to say this is because the game was never really too difficult until you got to some of like the later parts of it. And it's just kind of more like things could hit harder and they took longer to hit, basically is what it ended up being. But the casual mode just seems like it's just like a little bit easier version of the game. And the challenge mode is just what it was in CBT 1 and 2. So it's giving you like kind of a false pretense. At least that's what I felt like. I didn't feel like it ever got really that much more difficult from the other betas that I was playing when I clicked challenge mode. Because personally, I went to challenge mode because like I wanted to kind of see what was going on. And, you know, it didn't really feel that much harder. Now things hit a little bit harder and obviously they had health sponges, but I think that was more about like the type of modes that I was doing, as well as like them being bosses and me being a little under level, because I like to do stuff under level, right? Every time I see that, it's like, hey, by the way, you're under level. I'm like, all right, I can do it. If I could do damage, I can kill it. That's my mindset.
But from my own experience and others, the challenge mode isn't that well challenging.
Okay.
But it does scale with your level. So if you go off and grind some side missions and come back in challenge difficulty mode, it should scale appropriately. And then,
that's nice,
man,
though.
oh man, did the endgame receive massive changes. I already liked Hollow Zero mode a lot back in CBT 2, but this one is of a different breed now. In a nutshell, now there's a lot of unique biomes you can go through, each one offering the hardest difficulty, and you can also collect these license points that can be exchanged for upgrades such as attack boost, which will be active only in Hollow Zero. I mean, yeah, there are some similarities to Simulated Universe from HSR, but it's essentially an arcade roguelike mode, where you pick up really cool modifiers called Rezonia, and they can completely change your characters or even the team's build. I swear to you, challenging that pink boss on the hardest modified difficulty is still something I remember fondly. Now, another endgame mode called Shiyu Defense has also been added into the game.
Yeah, see, I like this one. This one was a lot of fun too.
Same as Spiral Abyss or Memory of Chaos. You pick a team, and within time limit, you have to beat the enemies in a stage. Later on, you also need to start using 2 teams, so basically you'll want to invest into 6 characters to clear this mode. Honestly, I like this type of challenge myself, because here you get to test the true potential and limits of the character. And
this is where you start to kind of want to work with your team in a way and start to work with your equipment and stuff like that. So obviously this is endgame, so you're going to be min-maxing or like at least thinking about some different things you can do to get a lot of the different stuff. So obviously this is just part of it, but the timer's nice. It's kind of something to remind you that you only have so much time to be able to do something, and it kind of forces you to play in a certain way, you know, a little less casual. But I will say overall, the game is kind of like a hardcore casual's dream, basically. Like there's nothing too much in it to where you're going to spend like days and days and days doing stuff to be able to get like to the highest points, you know, like weather waves or something like that. But you are going to be able to do pretty much most of the content, you know, just casually playing. And so some of this different stuff like the end game is going to be casual, kind of hardcore, where you're just kind of tickling, you know, getting some of the team comps and some of the best equipment and stuff like that. So kind of a nice mixture of both worlds, in my opinion.
Will be my go-to place to theorycraft. Like, honestly, this current version of the game feels almost unrecognizable from CBT 2. I mean, the crazy high-quality animations, the fluid combat, and the city all feel about the same, but a lot of the criticisms I had have been addressed, which I'm pretty happy about.
Yeah, they changed a lot, man.
We also gotta talk about the banners. And I think the most important one here would be the Bangboo banner.
Okay, I think it's nice though.
There's essentially 3 banner types: limited, weapon, and standard. Well, in Zenless Zone Zero, there's a 4th banner type, and that is where you get the Bangboos. You see, previously, these little guys would spook you in any of the summons, and essentially they would dilute the pool of rewards you can pull from. But now, they won't show up in any of the banners, except their very own little cute and cozy banner. Now, you might think, great, now I need to spend my
There's a way to get their currency, though, that's different.
Banner. Well, here's the thing. You actually cannot buy Bangboo banners.
Yeah.
The only way to obtain them is by doing various activities in the game. So, in other words, this is a purely free-to-play banner. Well, aside from the fact you can obtain a total of 5 pulls from the Battle Pass paid tier, but it's essentially a drop in the bucket compared to tons of ways you can get them from places like Hollow Zero, events, rally commissions, and so on.
Well, and to kind of give another counter argument, the Bangboos aren't like an end-all be-all type of thing. Like, they're sure nice and they do a couple different things, especially whenever you're in combat, but it's not something you're going to be like, damn, I wish I would have got that Bangboo Butler, or I'm screwed to be able to play. I'm not going to be able to play this team comp. So it is really just passive if you're kind of going through different things and doing different challenges because it's its own currency. but it's not a make or break anyway. So if you end up getting kind of unlucky, you're mainly just going to be mad because you didn't get one that you thought was cute rather than having some sort of issue with it being like part of the gameplay.
Also,
So
there's now an S rank character selector after you do 300 pulls on a standard banner, which is pretty good. And just like the last time, the beginner banner is still available to pull from for that quick and easy S rank character. All in all, a ton of changes have been made to this latest version of the game, and I think it's safe to say that Hoyo has taken the feedback pretty seriously here. And
yeah, I was pretty happy with the CBT3
stuff I just told you about. There's also various quality of life changes that were made to city exploration, optimizations for combat, and even a cool new character was added in. To tell you the truth, I had a
oh yeah, she was a lot of fun. I wasn't able to get her, unfortunately. I've seen some stuff on her.
I'm happy to see it in such a state, but this also made me wonder what else we could expect from this game when it launches. For example, I loved exploring the cozy 6th Street map.
So I think what his point's going to be here in a minute is the same point that I was going to make. So the overall map here is super nicely designed. Like I like all the little characters and different stuff, like the sushi man, the coffee dude. I think the characters in this game are just so unique and they have such an amazing personality. Now, I'm hoping this is what his point's going to be here in a minute. I would love to see some different cities and stuff. I don't know if they've confirmed that. I know they had like a little thing where they're talking about some different things they're going to add for the release, but I would like to see some different like little cities you can run. And you kind of get that when you go to Billabong. You have like the little construction team and you can kind of pour it over there in your little car, but it's not really a different city. It's just kind of like a construction site and you're just talking to that group there. So it's not really too much of a difference, but it is like a nice little takeaway from this spot, which will kind of gave me a hint that there was going to be different cities that you'd be able to kind of change and go into. So I think that would be very cool.
Had amazing
to be able to see
and environment design, and I always want more of that. So when I saw on Twitter that
I guess
this new shopping district map called Lumina Square,
yeah, let's go.
Excited about an actual big city life we could potentially get to explore. In fact,
this is what I'm talking about.
Got me thinking. There's a scene in the latest beta test where you can even see a subway map in 6th Street. So perhaps there will be a transportation system to get to Lumina Square, which could mean that the small maps we get to experience in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 could be easily expanded upon with a transportation system.
All right, bro. Yeah, this is dope.
Literally anywhere. Also, seeing how the new character is named Zhu Yuan, hopefully I pronounced her name correctly, it's possible we're gonna see yet another Chinese-style character, map, or region. And
I like how she's like an LPD, like a.
Well,
I guess it's not LPD, I guess, but police force.
But yeah, I'm pretty hyped about Zenless Zone Zero. It's been a pretty interesting journey, not gonna lie. I was there since the beginning, and I'm pretty optimistic about the game's future. I mean, at the end of the day, this game is drop dead gorgeous. The animations are out of this world.
I mean, I'm gonna go on record to say, but this might be one of the best like animated gachas, like the way that it looks currently in the story pacing. I think it's probably up there in terms of like the way the expression, like the expressions and stuff like that are on the characters are so phenomenal, dude. Like, and I'm gonna say the changes from CBT1 to CBT3 made me from a person who was gonna drop the game and never touch it again to probably gonna be covering it pretty exclusively on my channel. Now, obviously, I'll still be doing Weather Waste, but this will be kind of like its buddy in crime for Zenless Zone Zero until at least we get bored of it or we kind of see what's going on with launch. But that kind of turned my, overall opinion on it, because originally I wasn't going to play it. I thought it was going to be boring. I was like, okay, I can't do this shit. And then I played CBT3 and I was like, okay, this is pretty dope. And it was a lot of fun. And the combat, I feel like a lot of people are dogging on the combat, but it can get kind of like in there. So it's not like as in depth as some of the other games, but there's some different things you can do, and maybe we'll showcase that and talk about that when the game releases. But I think the game overall is going to be in a really healthy state, and I think the future for this game is going to be pretty well done. So I think they just hit like 40 million pre-registrations, so obviously there's some hype for this game, and I just think a lot of people are being a little too harsh on the game overall just because of the stuff they've seen from CBT1 and CBT2. Maybe they wrote it off completely and didn't even check out CBT3, which is kind of a mistake. So if you haven't, and you did write this game off, make sure to go back and watch some footage from CBT3 just to get a little bit of an idea, or at least wait for launch and then check it out for yourself, because of course it's going to be free to play and we'll be covering it as well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good rest of your night, guys. Peace.